Welcome back, guys. As most of you probably know, I tend to keep the subject matter on this channel pretty light-hearted and fun. I don't really delve into too many dark topics or emotions, but for some reason lately, the past week or so, the same story keeps popping into my head over and over, and I can't stop thinking about this situation and this girl. And I tell a lot of fun stories, but not all of life is fun and easy, and I think that some of the more serious stories deserve a little bit of time as well. And I do think that the message of the story and the takeaway from the story is very important and could potentially help somebody. I do want to put this out there. I don't really know how trigger warnings work, but I feel like maybe this is one because I will be talking about drugs and death and suicide. I'm not going to be using any names out of respect for the family and the situation, and it happened so long ago. So I guess I'll just start from the beginning from my perspective. One day, we were in class. I was in band at the time, and the classroom phone rang, and the teacher went and he answered the phone. He got really serious. He got this really concerned, shocked look on his face, and he hung it up and he turned to us and he said, "Everybody sit down, be quiet. The bell's going to ring in a couple minutes. You're going to stay seated." And then he went over to the doors and he locked them. And we were just like, oh shit, what is happening? And at first some of us were like, well, is it a bomb threat? Because we used to get bomb threats all the time, but then we realized that doesn't make sense because when we get a bomb threat, they evacuate us. And then we're like, is there some type of killer in the school? Is there a weather alert? Is there a terrorist attack? And none of us knew anything. The teacher wouldn't answer any questions. He was told not to. And the bell rang. We all stayed seated and we sat there for a really, really long time, and then the next bell rang, which means a whole other class period had passed, and still he said stay seated. And I can't tell you how long we were trapped in this room and nobody was telling us what was going on. We're all getting really scared and panicking because we had never had a situation like this, and we had practiced so many drills, so many, if there's a bomb, we all go to the band lot. If there's a tornado, we all go to the basement. If there's a fire, we take these exits on this side. We always had a plan, and this was just something that we had never planned, and nobody was telling us anything. So eventually they're texting their parents and calling their parents, and they're saying, do you know anything about this? And the parents are all freaking out, and now it's like an ordeal. Some of the parents started listening to the police scanners, and it was getting back to us that there were ambulances outside of our school, and we're just like, and at this point, a lot of us are panicking because we think there's some type of shooter or something, because that makes sense. Like, okay, the doors are locked. They're telling us to be quiet. They're telling us not to move. They're telling us not to leave. There's ambulances outside. And finally, they just opened the doors and let us go. And they wouldn't tell us anything still. So we're just like, okay, we just sat in this classroom for like hours. There's ambulances outside of our school, and you're just gonna let us go to our next class? So you can probably tell by the title of this video what happened. A girl died in class during school hours. And here's the story on that. So earlier in that day, around like first, second period, somebody sold her a bunch of Oxycontins. She, during school, took all of them. She ended up going to her 7th period class at 3rd period, and she walked in and the teacher was like, honey, what are you doing here? And she said, oh, I'm here for class. And the teacher was like, you're not here until later, honey. It's only 3rd period. And I wasn't here for this, but supposedly when she walked away, she said to somebody else, oh, she's on something, or she's drunk or something. But it was obvious that she was on something. So she went a couple classes later and she put her head down on the desk. She was sleeping, and she was just kind of one of those students who, you know, showed up late and slept in class. Obviously didn't show a ton of interest in her work. And her teacher for that period, who was actually an incredible teacher. Everybody in that school knows that he was an amazing teacher. He was a caring teacher, but he didn't wake her up for I don't know what reason it was. I don't know if he just thought, you know, you can only try so hard to make somebody interested in class. I don't know if he figured, you know what, she could really use the sleep, just let her nap. But that class was over and the bell rang and everybody got up, but she stayed seated laying on her desk like this with her head down, and she wasn't getting up. So somebody who was sitting next to her nudged her and was like, hey, wake up, class is over. And she didn't move, and then she nudged her a little harder to wake her up, and that is when her arm fell completely limp to the side of the desk. So obviously at this point, people start panicking. They roll her over and she is completely blue. I don't know how long she was out. I don't know how long she wasn't breathing, but she had completely OD'd and had not been receiving oxygen for enough time to turn her blue. That is when the ambulances were called. That is when the school was put on lockdown. She was taken out, obviously, and she died that day. In class, she died. And I remember it was shocking. It was scary. The hallways felt heavy. We had a school assembly at the beginning of every single year, and they always told the same stories about the same kids, and it was always an anti-drug assembly. I'm assuming that a lot of you guys have those at school. We kind of pushed a little bit harder because there was a lot of drug issues in my hometown and in my school. There were a lot of drug-related murders. There were a lot of suicides, and the principals and the school board did what they could to get the message across that there's help and there's somebody to talk to, and if you see a problem, report it. And they just drilled it into our heads so much. So I remember right after this happened, they called another assembly, like an emergency assembly. We all filed in, and usually when we file into assemblies, it's loud and nobody wants to be there and nobody's listening and nobody cares, but we sat there and we listened and we were silent. And they pulled down the projector screen and they projected onto it a picture of this girl's MySpace page. And he starts talking about what a tragedy this is, what a loss this was. He told us about the fact that it was oxys and that she had taken all of them, and started giving us the anti-drug speech that we get every year at the beginning of the year. But then they pulled down the big white projector screen and they project onto it her MySpace page. It sent chills down our spine because we're looking up at the MySpace profile and the face of this girl who literally just died in school, in the school that we are sitting in a day or two prior. And he points to it and he says, this girl is dead because she decided that drugs were more important. And then he pointed to, and I know a lot of you have never had MySpace, but next to your profile picture, it was your name, your age, your hometown, and a quote. And her quote was, "Snitches are bitches who end up in ditches." And my principal started getting so angry. It almost seemed like he was going to cry, but he was just furious or hurt. I don't know what exactly he was feeling, but he kept screaming over and over, "Snitches are bitches who end up in ditches, and that is the reason that she is in her grave, because of this quote right here. Somebody in this auditorium sold her those drugs. People in this auditorium knew that she took those drugs. There are people in this auditorium who knew that she was extremely high and doing these drugs in school, and nobody said anything. Maybe they were afraid they'd be called a snitch. Maybe they were afraid that they would end up in a ditch, but it's this mentality that keeps people in this trap." You could hear a pin drop in that room. So the boy who sold her the drugs, he got in a ton of trouble. He left school. The teacher who didn't wake her up ended up getting suspended, which a lot of people were very upset about because he was an amazing teacher and he was a great guy and he cared about his students very much. And I think what kind of ticked off other people was the other teacher who, you know, she walked in like 4 periods too soon and was like, "I'm here for class." And she could recognize that this girl was obviously high, had no punishment. And for the rest of my high school career, we were not allowed to put our elbows on our desk. We were not allowed to lean on our hands. We were not allowed to put our heads down. We had to sit straight up like this, and if we slouched or put our heads down in any way, the teacher would yell at us. Sometimes we would get detention, sometimes we'd get sent to ISS. And then the next year, for the first day of school, when they gave us our assembly about drugs and staying on the right path, her story was added to the list of names of students. What I want to get across to you guys is, if you see somebody who's maybe spiraling a little, if you see somebody who's in danger, if you recognize that somebody needs help, don't be afraid to speak up. And actually that reminds me of another story of kind of in the same vein, where my friend was in a really, really toxic, abusive relationship and she broke up with him, which she needed to do, and he lost it. He said that he was going to kill her and then kill himself, telling her to sleep with one eye open. And I was really, really good friends with her. I was getting really close with her, but I was friends with him first. So he disappeared. She couldn't find him. She was afraid. She had her doors locked and she was horrified that he was gonna show up and kill her and then kill himself. So then I called him and I was like, "What are you doing, man?" And he said the same thing to me. He's like, "I'm going insane. I can't live with it. Like, I can't live like this. I can't handle this. I'm going to hurt her. I'm gonna hurt myself." And he was like, "Can you come help me? I just need someone to talk to. Can you come sit with me and talk to me? I'm not gonna do anything. I just need a friend. I need company. Otherwise, I'm going to kill her and myself." And just because of who I am, it took all of my strength to not get in my car and drive to him and sit with him and talk to him. But the reality of the situation is, I knew that A, that was dangerous. B, me that even if nothing happened, he's still a dangerous person and in a very dangerous headspace. And I knew I had to call the police. And I've never done that before, and it was so scary to pick up the phone and be like, hey, this person said they're going to kill my friend and themselves. This is their location, go get them. But that's what I did, and the cops went and they picked him up, and he went to jail for a couple days. He was ordered to get therapy and the help he needed. She was able to get a protection from abuse from him, and that's what needed to happen. And it was really hard to do that because he was my friend. And it's hard when somebody's asking you for help and saying, you know, I just need you to come sit with me and talk to me, but you know in your heart that that's not safe and that that person needs help. Ugh. And it ruined my friendship with him, obviously. And that sucks because, you know, I hate that feeling that this kid wanted my help. He wanted a friend, and I essentially betrayed him, and I called the cops on him when he, I don't know, I'm just repeating myself now. The point is, it was the right thing to do. And again, if you're ever in a situation where you see that somebody needs help or you see that somebody's in danger, you have to speak up. You have to stand up. That goes with drugs. That goes with suicide. That goes with bullying and harmful behavior. That goes with if you see somebody getting bullied or picked on, stand up for them, help them, ask them if they're okay. This is a little bit heavy. I'm sorry. Like I said, I don't know why I felt compelled to tell this story today. I don't know why I've been thinking about it so much, but I hope you guys learned something, and I hope that it helped in some way. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. As always, I love you very, very much. Thanks for being a part of my family. Look out for one another, and I'll see you next time.
Stay alive for me. You will die, but now your life is free. Take pride in what is yours.